Let's begin with breaking news coming in. Before we get to the latest updates of what's happening on the moon's surface, the congratulations, the felicitations for our ISRO scientists continues. Prime Minister Modi, who remember was watching the historic landing on the moon virtually, is going to be in Bengaluru tomorrow morning. He's going to be meeting with our ISRO scientists. He's going to meet with ISRO Chief S. Somnath and several others, as he will be meeting them for the first time after that landing to personally congratulate them. It's going to be a very tight schedule for the Prime Minister. He's got a lot lined up, so it's going to be a very early morning visit. So ensure you wake up early, even on the weekend, on Saturday, and join us live here on India Today as we'll get you those latest updates and live images as the Prime Minister visits the ISRO headquarters tomorrow in the city of Bengaluru. So a reminder to watch India Today tomorrow at 7 a.m. is when the Prime Minister is expected to be meeting with the ISRO scientists. We'll be spending 1 hour at the ISRO headquarters meeting Team Chandrayaan. We'll get you all of those images. But what's happened in the last 24 hours? Rover Pragyaan right now is making its way through the surface of the moon. We've been getting a lot of pictures, a lot of videos, courtesy ISRO, including that amazing moment when the rover actually came out of Vikram and landed on the surface of the moon. These are breathtaking images. So for the first time, we're seeing with such crystal clear clarity what the moon's surface, what the south polar region of the moon actually looks like.
You're watching History in Motion. The Pragyaan, the Chandrayaan-3 Rover coming out of the lunar lander Vikram and taking its first steps on the moon's soil. The images of India's Moonwalk that began on Thursday were released by the Indian Space Research Organization on Friday. The movement from the rover down the ramp, while it appears quite easy, was made possible by a series of complex maneuvers.
No, this the particular video what is put is the rover on the surface of the moon. Now it's first of all this is a very complex process, and it is come out and is moving around on the surface of the moon. And now it will collect the scientific data, and that data will be sent to Earth for analysis by the scientists.
ISRO has confirmed that all the systems of Chandrayaan-3 are working normally and all experiments will be conducted on the lunar surface as per schedule. 3 lander module payloads along with ILSA, an instrument used to measure lunar seismic activity, have been turned on by ISRO. A third payload, Rambha, which will study the atmosphere near the surface of the moon, is switched on. The Pragyaan rover is the first of its kind to be deployed to the moon's south pole. Over the next 14 Earth days, which equals 1 lunar day, Pragyaan will cover moon's surface at speeds as low as 1 centimeter per minute. It is equipped with a variety of instruments including a camera, a spectrometer and a magnetometer. The rover will conduct experiments to study the moon's surface, including its composition, mineralogy and history. It will be powered by solar panels and will communicate with the lander Vikram. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is in Greece on a one-day visit, highlighted the success of Chandrayaan mission in his talks with the Greek president.
चंद्रयान-3 की सफलता वो सिर्फ भारत की या भारत के वैज्ञानिकों की सफलता ऐसा नहीं है, ये पूरी मानव जाति के लिए सफलता है। मैं मानता हूं कि उससे जो नतीजे निकलेंगे वो पूरी साइंटिफिक फैटर्निटी को और मानव जात को चंद्र के संबंध में जो उसकी जिज्ञासाएं हैं और लोग जो भावी प्लान कर रहे हैं उसमें बहुत उपयोगी हो सकता है।
The successful lunar landing will inspire more complex space missions by ISRO. India aims to embark on her first mission to study the sun. Mission Aditya will launch in September. The Moonwalk is only the beginning of many such endeavours. Bureau Report, India Today.
So those are the updates that have come in from ISRO, from Team Chandrayaan. I want to go back to Sagai Raj, who's joining us live from Bengaluru, to get you those details about the Prime Minister's visit tomorrow morning. Sagai, good evening. Take us through what really the Prime Minister's schedule looks like. He's going to be in Bengaluru for just about 3 hours, and those 3 hours is going to be dedicated to meeting with the Team Chandrayaan.
Absolutely. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is directly flying from Greece to Bengaluru. He'll be reaching HL Airport as early as around 5:30 a.m. in the morning. And from there, he'll be meeting a couple of his party workers in the airport. And there is a grand welcome which has been organized by BJP at the airport. And following that, he'll be reaching the ISRO around 6:30, 7 o'clock, where he will be meeting the chairman, and he will be understanding how the lander and rover has been worked, and he will also appreciate. He will also address the ISRO scientists who have been working on this particular project from a long time. So everything has been prepared here. The huge welcome has also been prepared here by the BJP party workers, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be meeting the scientists in ISRO.
Okay, all right, Sagai. We'll be watching out, of course, for all the updates that you send us tomorrow as well. Thanks for the moment for joining us with those details of the itinerary that the Prime Minister will follow tomorrow when he touches down in Bengaluru. Let's focus for a moment on those images that have come in today that show the rover Pragyaan in action. We put that out on our screens right now. The first video that ISRO has released that shows the rover actually getting down from the lander Vikram. There you have it, coming down on a slope on the wheels and then going onto the surface of the moon. Let's explain that in greater detail by getting in experts on this broadcast. Joining us here is Dr. Amitabh Ghosh, NASA scientist. We also have Mr. Arvind Paranjape, who is in fact the chief of the Nehru Planetarium in Mumbai. He's joining us from New Jersey this evening. Dr. Ghosh, to you first. Good evening. Can you explain to us how really this rover works? Completely made in India, but importantly, there are about 27 mechanisms, which is what ISRO has explained, 26 mechanisms actually, that bring this rover together and has enabled it to actually move down on its own out of the lander, out of Vikram, and onto the surface of the moon.
So once you land, what you do is you do a health check of the rover and the lander. You check out all the subsystems, the mobility subsystem, the communication subsystem, and if you find everything right, then you you roll out the ramp. So the rolling out the ramp is kind of a non-reversible step in most cases. I don't know for ISRO, for NASA at least. So you have to be very careful that you're doing it right. And then you have to very carefully, lower the rover. Just remember that if something happens while rolling out while the rover drives off the ramp, there is no way to correct it. There's no human being on the moon to fix it and, bring it up, or if it overturned, to straighten it. So that is the process that you saw, and each of these processes are interrupted by data is being constantly beamed back, and the controllers at ISRO are looking at it and then again sending commands. So everything is being done incrementally. For the landing, you saw it was an completely automated sequence, right? Here there is active interference. There's a human in the loop, we call it. So that is what is happening.
Interesting. And, when I was speaking to the former ISRO chief, to Mr. Sivan, he made a point about why the Chandrayaan-3 cost us so less, because all of it is India-made, including the rover. Mr. Arvind Paranjape, am I right in saying that every part of that rover has been made by our scientists, India-made?
See, it's not just me. I think the scientific community as a whole, they're looking for the distribution.
Yes, that was to Mr. Paranjape. Mr. Paranjape? Mr. Paranjape, that question is to you.
Alicia, are we getting the system?
I'll come back to you, Dr. Ghosh. Mr. Paranjape, can you answer that particular question for us? Mr. Paranjape, about how, this has been completely India-made?
A lot of our bikes otherwise, right? Like Lamba Lamba.
I think so, yes. It is completely made by Indian scientists, tested on Indian land, and made some, I suppose, what news I get is that they had made some artificial surface to test out how it would move on the surface of the moon. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it is an indigenous buggy or rover. as we call it.
But, let's talk about exploration. Dr. Ghosh, if I can bring you in now, let's talk about really what we can see in the next 14 days. As someone who's a NASA scientist, and you've, of course, been a part of these kind of missions before, what's got you most excited about this particular mission, about what Chandrayaan-3 could perhaps find on the moon?
See, it's not just me. I think the scientific community as a whole, they're looking for the distribution and composition of the ice. Having said that, I don't know how far the craters are. I don't know whether, even if they're close, whether there is a drivability issue. There are no roads on the moon, so you have to drive this rover very carefully through a tract of soil or regolith, which is non-hazardous. So it has to be also drivable. So that is the single most, I think. But in general, even if you got that analysis, that would not be the only analysis. There'll be NASA missions and there'll be other country missions, surely, to have data. It's a large region. You have to find out a lot of information. But the other information would be the general geology of the area, the composition of the regolith, the composition of soils, if the composition of the rocks, if they analyze a rock with the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer. There's a variety of geological questions that are very interesting.
But, I again want to bring the focus back to that video that ISRO has released today. You can't see enough of it, of the rover coming down onto the surface of the moon. If you can just play that, because my question next, Mr. Paranjape, is about that particular footage. And when you see really the rover Pragyaan coming out of lander Vikram and coming onto the surface of the moon, you see a heavy shadow on the lunar surface. Is that normal? Is there like a spotlight there, or is that how naturally the moon is lit up?
Oh yeah, that is very clear that it is in the south pole of the moon. Actually, south pole of the moon was chosen for two reasons. One is that it is that part of the moon, that is, we're comparing between north and south pole of the moon. South pole is towards the sun, and therefore it does get a lot of the moon. And also we have chosen the south pole of the moon because that's where water was discovered. So what shadow and light that we get is perfectly normal. There is nothing wrong in it. In fact, this place will have now shadow sunlight for coming 14 days, or say now 12 days, because you see the total day on the moon is something like 14 hours. And day and night put together, it is something 28 hours, that is a period. That is a lunar period that we know, nakshatras, etc. So it's a 20 days plus certain time. So this is perfectly normal. I don't see anything wrong. In fact, it's a beautiful images that I have seen sent by my friends.
Interesting. Like Mr. Paranjape and Dr. Ghosh, request both of you to stay on with me. I want to focus on ISRO's announcement today. They've said that, look, Chandrayaan-3 is, yes, something we're focusing on, particularly in the next 14 days. But that doesn't mean they put pause or put a full stop on the other missions that they're working on. They've set their eyes on the next one, which is the sun. Aditya L1 is the launch, in fact, is the mission that's going to be launched on September 2nd using a PSLV rocket. Now, this will be used to study the sun. It will be placed in a halo orbit around what's referred to as the Lagrange point 1, which our experts will explain for us in just a bit. This is in between the sun and the Earth, about 15 lakh kilometers away from Earth. It would take 127 days for the spacecraft to reach its destination. So this is way beyond how far Chandrayaan-3 has traveled. A satellite placed in such an orbit is a major advantage of continuously viewing the sun without any eclipse. This mission aims to provide a greater advantage of observing solar activities and its effect on space weather in real time. So there is a handout that ISRO gave today that explains the Aditya L1 mission and what really it aims to do. So let's explain that to you. According to them, the main objectives, one, is to study the upper atmospheric dynamics, which is also going to be very crucial to understand how really the sun influences weather patterns. Now, besides that, some of the other objectives are also of the Aditya L1 mission is the physics of solar corona and its heating mechanism. Now, remember that this satellite is going to be placed between the Earth and the sun. So it will will constantly give you a feed essentially of how the sun works, the kind of heat waves that it produces. It understands the coronal mass ejection and the solar flares. I'm sure you've read up of solar flames, seen all of those viral videos of what it looks like and how mesmerizing it truly is. It also helps to understand the near-Earth space weather and how influenced it is really by the sun. So this is another mission, another objective essentially that Aditya L1 will hope to accomplish. It will study the dynamics of solar atmosphere, how it changes, what triggers it, what are essentially the biggest influences. Solar wind distribution, also another big aspect which goes around the entire sun. That also will be something that Aditya L1 will help to also break down. But as I said, this particular mission, if you look at Aditya L1, it's going to be traveling a lot further than Chandrayaan-3. And that's why, Dr. Ghosh, if I can ask you, is this a lot more challenging than the moon mission, the Aditya L1 mission?
See, in a way, there is no soft landing. So it's not as challenging. It's a launch which ISRO has done before, and so it is headed to a different part of the solar system. So it's a very interesting mission. But I think where the Chandrayaan-3 was very important is that it developed a capability. It was just not also about the specific mission. It means that later ISRO could send another lander to Mars, to the moon, to the asteroid. So it's kind of the Chandrayaan-1 mission. Before that, India did not have a single orbiter. Once it had that, there was Chandrayaan-1, there was Mangalyaan-1. So while Aditya is very interesting, this is a development of capability which is very significant.
Mr. Paranjape, what do you think are the big takeaways from this kind of a mission to the sun? What will ISRO be looking to achieve here?
No, Aditya 1 is the spacecraft which will be placed at the Lagrangian point, as we know. Lagrangian points are where the gravity of Sun and Earth is equal, and it is made for observing the observations of the Sun. Which is Sun is our nearest star, and by studying the Sun, we can make models, or astronomers have been making models about how other stars would be. So in that sense, it's a very much technological mission as well as a solar scientific mission, and therefore these two missions can't be compared. There will be one interesting factor is to take the spacecraft and put it at that a Lagrangian point, and that would be some kind of a small challenge, but that challenge can be overcome by anyone without. I'm sure ISRO will overcome the challenge and put the spacecraft. And by putting the space satellite at Aditya 1 there, you can monitor the sun 24 hours non-stop, continuously. Sun can be monitored, taken photographs and images sent back to India.
It's a game changer really in studying the solar surface and studying the sun. The fact that it's going to be there right in the middle. What Mr. Paranjape explained for us is it's between the Earth and the sun. L1, L2, L3 are different points. This is right bang in the middle of the sun. Thanks very much, Mr. Paranjape and Dr. Amitabh Ghosh for taking the time out and joining us here on India Today. It's not just Aditya L1. There are several other missions also that ISRO is focusing on, that they're working on simultaneously. And our next report we break down for you all the missions to look forward to.
In weeks, ISRO prepares to launch its ambitious Aditya L1, the mission to the sun. This is the first space-based observatory-class Indian solar mission to study the sun. The spacecraft would be placed in a halo orbit around Lagrangian point 1 or L1 of the Sun-Earth system. About 1.5 million kilometers from the Earth, Aditya L1 is set to continuously view the sun without any occultation or eclipse. At an approximate cost of 378 crore rupees, Aditya L1 would be the first spatially resolved solar disk in the near UV band. Around January of 2024, a low Earth orbit observatory is all set to be jointly developed by NASA and ISRO at an approximate cost of 12,300 crore rupees. It's called NISAR. It will map the entire globe in 12 days, provide spatially and temporally consistent data for understanding changes in Earth's ecosystems. Ice mass, vegetation biomass, sea level rise, groundwater, and natural hazards including earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, and landslides. In the third quarter of 2024, SPADEX or Space Docking Experiment at an estimated cost of 124 crore rupees is scheduled to be launched. It will be a twin spacecraft mission. Space Docking Experiment is being developed by ISRO to mature technologies related to orbital rendezvous, docking, formation, flying, and other proximity operations. This will create scope of applications in human spaceflight, in-space satellite servicing, and other proximity operations. The Mars Orbiter mission, Chandrayaan-2, is all set to be launched in 2024. It will reportedly include a hyperspectral camera, a high-resolution panchromatic camera, and a radar to understand early Martian crust, recent basalts, and boulder falls. And finally, by the end of 2024 to the beginning of 2025, ISRO will launch its first manned mission, Pragyaan. Series of test flights have already started. Pragyaan module will carry Indian astronauts into orbit for 3 days. The Indian Space Agency has shortlisted 4 candidates to go on this mission. They have already undergone initial training in Russia. Now they are undergoing future training at the newly opened astronaut training facility in Bengaluru.
We'll look to the future. Let's look back in time as to how ISRO has reached this point where they're making us so proud. From the 1960s, they worked hard in ensuring that we reached this point where we've been able to touch down on the surface of the moon and talk about missions to Mars, to the sun, and whatnot. So let's trace the journey of the Indian Space Research Organization.
India's first rocket was taken to the launch site on a bullock cart. It was launched from Thumba in 1963 by the Indian National Committee for Space Research or INCOSPAR, established by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and scientist Vikram Sarabhai a year ago. The Thumba Equatorial Rocket Launch Station was later named the Vikram Sarabhai Space Centre. The Indian Space Research Organization came into existence in 1969 with the renaming of INCOSPAR by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. India's first satellite Aryabhat was launched in 1975 by the Russian Cosmos 3M rocket from their Kapustin Yar launch base. In the years that followed, ISRO started developing its own launch vehicles. After initial setbacks, an indigenous satellite vehicle was launched from the Sriharikota range in Andhra Pradesh in 1980 under the supervision of Satish Dhawan and APJ Abdul Kalam. Over the next few decades, ISRO developed polar satellite launch vehicles and then the GSLV. The GSLV used cryogenic engines developed indigenously, a major achievement as the technology was denied to India by the US. Over the same period, ISRO also launched the INSAT series of satellites that revolutionized broadcasting, telecommunication, and weather forecast. The stage by then was set for bigger things. In 2003, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in his Independence Day speech, announced a lunar mission.
विज्ञान के क्षेत्र में भारत एक ऊंची उड़ान लेने के लिए तैयार है। मुझे ये बताने में बड़ी खुशी हो रही है कि भारत चंद्रमा पर अपना अंतरिक्ष यान भेजेगा। इसका नाम होगा चंद्रयान प्रथम।
In October 2008, Chandrayaan-1 took off from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota. The lunar project discovered a large number of water molecules in Moon. In 2013, Mangalyaan, the Mars orbiter mission, took off and entered the planet's orbit a year later.
Here we have a majestic liftoff of LTM-3 M4 rocket carrying
Chandrayaan-3 heralds a new dawn. India has become the first country to touch down on the south pole of Moon.
जी हाँ, आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम
From manned space missions to solar probe missions, ISRO has big projects in the pipeline. India is rising as a space power. Bureau Report, India Today.
And we've got an update for you from ISRO on rover Pragyaan's movement. ISRO has confirmed that in the last 24 hours since rover Pragyaan stepped out of the lander, it's actually traversed a distance of about 8 meters. All of the payloads on board the rover have been turned on. All planned rover movements have been verified, is what ISRO has said. This is great news. Essentially, ISRO saying all is well, we're performing just as we expected, and the rover is also moving perfectly on the lunar surface. Sagaraj is joining us with more details on this. Great news this, Sagai, because you've got ISRO once again saying that the rover is moving around very comfortably. All payloads on the propulsion module, on the lander, on the rover have been switched on. 8 meters has been covered so far.
First of all, Akshita, we need to thank ISRO for instant updates on rover and lander, because the entire country is looking at ISRO after Chandrayaan-3 was launched in Sriharikota. They are curiously waiting for every single movement, every single development which is happening in connection with Chandrayaan. And it is a very good move that it has traveled close to 8 meters on the surface of the moon, and now it is on its job where it is collecting the soil sample, fertilizers or other things on the space of the moon, which will be helpful for the scientists to understand and study the moon. And definitely they will try to utilize the rover to the fullest, because they have only 14 days in their hand, and there are enough solar panels on the rover as well as the lander. And definitely they will try to utilize as much as possible in these 14 days.
All right, Sagai, thanks very much for getting us those details. And you're right, ISRO has been putting out constantly every update coming in, and we're thankful for that, because so many of us right now are curious to know what's really happening on the moon's surface. What is Chandrayaan-3 up to? What is Pragyaan up to?